naturally. So the commandments reinforced a basic message. There is one God who created the universe. And idolatry is not only disrespectful to that God, but idolatry will lead you in avenues that will not permit you to develop a balanced personality. Because you need that one God who is inside of you to provide you with the discipline and the willpower to control the body. Without the interaction with Allah, you will be misguided and confused. Therefore, Adam knew there was one God. Noah knew there was one God. Abraham knew there was one God. And so that the world would know it, God himself wrote it, provided the writings to Moses for the world to see, but see how? To see through the lives of the children of Israel. So if you could not read, all the people from the known world that came to Jerusalem could see what the Ten Commandments were by looking at the people's lives. That was the purpose of the model city. Unfortunately, God's will was not fulfilled. This is not Khalid Abdullah Al-Mansour indicting anyone. I am not anti-Semitic, and I have every reason to believe that God is not anti-Semitic. But in the Jewish Bible it says God was continually angry at the behavior of the Jews. And when he sent messengers to warn them, my people, I have not asked of you very much, only to live righteous lives. You are the beneficiary. A righteous life will make you healthier. It will make you mentally stronger. It will make you happier. So I'm giving you an assignment that confers the benefits on you. But you are stiff-necked, rebellious, defiant, and they refuse to follow the commandments that God had given them, turning to idols, turning to adultery, turning to fornication, turning to idolatry, turning to the worship of many gods, and God decreed that they must leave. And he disbanded them and he took them into captivity. And then in his mercy he brought them back and said, now try again. See if you will merely live the life that I have prescribed. And they refused. And finally, God disbanded them throughout the Middle East, in parts of North Africa. And they became part of the Roman Empire. And it was during the Roman Empire that the fifth stage leading to Christianity unfolded, and that was the life, the birth and the life of Jesus. And for 3 years, he had a ministry. He taught, and what did he teach? We will not be surprised to find out he taught the same as Adam, and the same as Noah, and the same as Moses. He taught there is one God. And we must love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And he said to the Jews, this is your last chance to repent and follow these simple assignments from God himself. Recognizing there is one God and everyone in the universe is a brother because they have come from that God. Is this so difficult? Is this so strenuous a burden for mankind to follow? But the Jews said, we don't need to hear you, Jesus. Who are you? Your father was a carpenter. We know him. And you were working as a carpenter, then you went down to Egypt, you came back here. We know all about you. We are not going to listen to you because we have a father, and its name is Abraham. Jesus said, let me give you a direct message. Now, this is not anyone speaking but Jesus. He said, you are not of Abraham. You are of your father, the devil. And whatever he tells you, that is what you will do. Because he was a liar and he was a murderer from the beginning. Now, for those of you who think that I'm distorting, I would ask you to merely turn to the New Testament in the book of John, the 4th biographical book in the New Testament, in the 8th chapter and the 44th verse, and you will read what I have just recited. This is what Jesus said to the Jews. He said further, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered you under my wings as a hen gathereth her chicks? But thou wouldest not. You have slain the prophets, every one that tried to enlighten you. You killed them. What then did the Jews do? They killed Jesus. Wait a minute. We are told we should not say that. I have friends who are Jewish who say, Khalid, don't ever say that the Jews killed Jesus. This is anti-Semitic. Well, I don't want to be anti-Semitic. So I told them I'm just repeating what I heard. If I'm saying something that is wrong, I'll stop saying it. But I just heard it, I read it. But I have to tell you where I read it. I read it in the Bible from Peter. On the day of Pentecost, Peter was giving a speech to the Jews, and he said, we killed Jesus. He was there. Menachem Begin was not there in the year 33 A.D. The Jewish Defense League was not in the year 33 A.D., but Peter was. And Paul was, and Paul said, we killed him. But perhaps you say Peter could be wrong and Paul could be wrong. Well, let me offer you another testimony of someone who was there. The lawyers would call this primary evidence. And that evidence comes from the victim himself. Jesus told his disciples that I am going to Jerusalem and I will be delivered up by the Jews and crucified. Now, if Jesus said that he was to be killed by the Jews, and Peter said he was, and Paul said he was, how can I, because I wasn't there, refute their statements? You have to give me some evidence of someone who was there who said, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. No one has produced any contrary evidence. Those three stages embodied in Jesus' statement, there's one God, gave rise to the movement that today we know as Christianity. Christianity. A movement that now says that they have somewhere near 1 billion followers. A movement that says that in America it has established more than $2 trillion in gross national product because of Christianity. A religion that is looked to by the Queen of England and the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, even when she lifts sanctions. It is a religion that is looked to by the French and the Italians and the Western world as a whole. How could I, in my right mind, after going to college for 7 years, after studying both logic and law, How could I dare say that Christianity has the seeds of its own destruction? That's why I told you when I started, don't become emotional. I want you to think with me. I want you to force me to produce on a logical basis evidence to support the statements that I am making. Otherwise, we do all of ourselves a disservice. Allah has told us that we should go even to China in the search of knowledge. Allah has recognized the importance of knowledge as food for the brain. The only food that the brain can have is knowledge. We are told to search the universe everywhere because this is Allah, knowledge. Muslim societies were great in times past because they respected knowledge and they permitted those with knowledge to advise. So my question is, how could I make such bold, controversial statements after seeing this amazing growth of Christianity for so many years? Let me share with you my reasoning. It is my contention that Christianity has in its framework the seeds of its own destruction. What seeds are we referring to? Well, they fall into two categories. They're the doctrinal seeds, theological seeds, and they're the operational seeds. The doctrinal seeds are such that people, the more they read, the more they will turn away from Christianity. Why do I say that? These are very strong statements. And if I were a Christian, I would probably be a little upset, saying, who does this person think he is? So let me tell you why I am making these statements. Christianity, after the death of Jesus, developed the doctrine of the Trinity. Almost no one can explain it. They tried to say that there are three gods, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, in one. When you ask them to explain, is it one or is it three? I mean, three can't be one and one can't be three. Then they say, well, this is a mystery and only God understands it. Well, if it's a mystery, how did you know it? Did God tell you that there was three in one and they were one or they were three or what? The problem is, if you are worshiping three gods, that's idolatry. And it has been condemned by every prophet. It has been the most basic offense to God since the beginning of man. 3, 2 gods, anything more than one, even 1.5, is taboo. So if the Christians are saying there are three, and they mean it literally, these doctrine will self-destruct the movement. Because as people analyze the commandments of God, they say, well, how can this be? I must tell you that the Christian movement did not always believe that there were three gods in one. Right after Jesus' death, there was a great deal of controversy. Some of the people, the Gnostic people, the Coptics in Ethiopia and in Egypt, they did not believe this. Some did, and there were a lot of debates because many said it doesn't make sense. They just found some of the old Coptic writings in Egypt, in a cave, of people who wrote around the time Jesus was there. And they said then, don't tell anyone 3 in 1. Don't tell anyone Trinity. This doesn't make sense. So I'm not saying it in 1990 for the first time. Those people who were the closest to Jesus were confused about this doctrine. Why are they confused? Because of the Bible. On one occasion, Jesus was asked by a nice lady who loved her sons very much. She had 2 sons. And she said, Master, I believe you. I believe you are the Master. When you arrive in heaven, would you give me just one favor? I'm an old lady. I love my sons. They have been good sons. give me a favor. Let one sit on the right hand and one sit on the left hand. Jesus said, woman, you don't know what you're asking. This is not my power. I cannot put someone on my right hand, someone on my left hand. The only one that can provide the seat assignment in heaven is my Father. Now, if they are both one, how can you cut yourself in half and divide functions? Let me give you another example. You look skeptical, as though you're not quite convinced. So let me provide you from the Bible another set of data that contradicts the concept of the Trinity. On one occasion, Jesus told his disciples that he was going to be crucified. And he was going to go away, but he would return. And Peter said, Jesus, could I have a few words with you privately? Jesus said, what would you like? He said, I don't know how to put this, but do you have any idea when you might be coming back? Just kind of general, maybe within a month or a season or something. Because Peter was saying, if worse comes to worse, and I should make some mistakes along the way, at least if I know he's coming back in the month of July 1991, starting in March, I will be on my best behavior. Jesus said, Peter, I cannot tell you that. Should I repeat that? Jesus said, Peter, I cannot tell you that. I don't know. The angels do not know. The only one who knows the day of my return is my Father who is in heaven. Now, if they're one, how could they hold secret from each other? This is the doctrine inherent in today's Christianity that will cause its destruction, because the more people read and the more people look at logic, the more they cannot accept it. As the early Christians right after Jesus died, not only is there a doctrinal limitation in Christianity that will cause it to decay, related to the Trinity, we must also look at the whole notion of interceders. The Christians told us that we can use Jesus to get to God. We can use Mary to get to God. We can use Peter or Joseph to get to God. But what did God say? He spoke to Adam directly, no one in between. He spoke to Moses directly, no one in between. And if he is inside of us, there is no one in between us and Allah. No partners. No boards of directors. It's you and Allah directly. What more could you ask for? If I have a choice of talking to my father directly, or having to go through my uncle or my cousin and my niece and my nephew, and when I have a grandchild, say, you speak for me, maybe I could do that. But if I have a choice, would you not prefer to speak directly, especially when Allah has put himself inside of you? Why did he do it if he did not want you to communicate directly? If he wanted you to communicate through Peter, he would put himself only in Peter. Then you would have to go through Peter to get to him. Or he put himself only in Jesus or in Mary or in the angels, and you would have to go through them. But he put himself in you. So the more people look at the Bible and they use common sense and logic, the more they turn from Christianity and say, this does not make sense. These are two theological problems that Christianity will continue to face through the years. But there are some operational problems that are as serious as the theological problems. There's one problem. The only way I know how to describe it is to call it like it is. The problem of racism. Big problem. Not a doctrine presented by Jesus. He said no. Jesus said, now we must all recognize there's no more God's chosen people. We are all God's chosen people, and therefore we are all brothers. But when Constantine converted to Christianity and saw the value of using the movement for conquest and divide and conquer, he began to ferment the manipulation and the distortion of Christianity. Jesus didn't do it. I'm not indicting Jesus. I'm talking about those who have controlled Christianity, the church, the institution. We are told that in some year around 300 AD, some 300 years after Jesus was born, the church in Rome, now Constantine is in power, and the church headquarters goes to Europe. It was in Jerusalem. You had the Coptic church in Ethiopia, the Coptic church in Egypt. Somehow the Europeans got a hold of Christianity and brought it to Europe where they could control it. And they had to explain, because people would ask, how did this get to Europe when most of the Christians were not in Europe in 300 AD? If I were to take Mecca tomorrow and bring it to Washington, D.C., there's 1 billion Muslims. They would say, what's going on? I mean, you're telling us now to pray to Washington, D.C. Why? You would have to ask. Well, they had an answer for you. They said, Peter, he's the one. Peter, when he was alive, we know he came from Palestine. And Peter, we are told, after Jesus died, according to the church, traveled all the way from Palestine to Rome. He didn't know anyone in Rome. He knew that Christians were being killed by the Romans at random, but nevertheless, he went. And after he got there, he looked for some white man. And then when he found them, he said, I'm going to make you the Pope. I'm the Pope now, but I want you to be the Pope from now on. And when you die, you make sure that the only popes look like you. Don't let any pope that looks like me be Pope. He must have said that because they didn't have any popes that look like me. Well, you ask a good question. What did Peter look like? What did Jesus look like? Again, I have to confess to you, I was not there. I know of no photograph that we can hold up. So I have to take the comments of people who said they saw Jesus in that period of time. Or they knew what the people looked like. Why don't I start with one of the famous historians from Europe? This would be more impressive. If I started from someone that's in the Bible, maybe there's some people that don't like the Bible. Let me start with the most famous Roman historian. His name was Tacitus. T-A-C-I-T-U-S. And they asked Tacitus during the period of time when Palestine was a colony of Rome. They said, Tacitus, you have traveled, you have advised emperors, you have attended legislative debates, you have seen visitors in Rome from all the nations, you have recorded data. We have a question for you. Tacitus said, please, ask whatever you would like. They said, Tacitus, where did the Jews come from originally? Good question. Tacitus said, everyone in Rome, we're talking now 80 AD, everyone in Rome knows that the original Hebrews came from Ethiopia, and that they migrated because they believed in one God. They were persecuted in Ethiopia, and they migrated into the Middle East, and then they migrated to other parts. This is Tacitus. Now, why should I believe Menachem Begin, who tells me that the Jews look like him, when Tacitus says the Jews look like Ethiopians? Now, we know that Moses' wife was an Ethiopian. You know that, don't you? Well, that's what Moses said. And if God was the author of the Bible, that's what God said. Because in the 11th and the 12th chapter, it describes Moses' wife, Zipporah. And it says that Moses' sister, Miriam, and Moses' brother, Aaron, didn't like the fact that Moses was getting married to Zipporah. And they started talking, ridiculing. They said, Zipporah was not with us in Egypt. She didn't go through 400 years of suffering. Why are you going to marry her? There are plenty nice Jewish girls within our group that you can marry. And God got angry. God said, Miriam and Aaron, I want you to come here in front of me. I have something to tell you. I am God, and Moses is my chosen. And when I speak to the prophets and the priests, I speak to them through thunder and through lightning and through symbols. When I speak to Moses, I speak face to face. Now, if I respect this man, and I respect his wife, a black woman, who are you to question this man's judgment? This is in the Jewish Bible. And God said, so that you will not easily forget the transgression, and that you will not easily forget that I hate racism, I'm going to turn you white. That's in the Bible. There's nothing in the Bible about God ever turning anyone black through a curse. The only ones turned by God into any color at all was Asa and Miriam, and they were turned white as a curse. Please don't misquote me. I didn't do it. I probably wouldn't have, because, you know, our hearts are such that we sometimes lose perspective. God did it. Cursed her. Said, don't ever do that again. Unfortunately, the Christians did not take this message to heart, because they continued to incorporate racism into Christianity. And as they conquered the world with their military might, they continued to preach in the name of Jesus that black people are inferior. So they said the worst is to be African, the next worst to be Asian, the best to be white. And they took everything in the Bible and they turned it white. The angels became white, blonde hair, blue eye. I defy you to go anywhere from the Vatican to America to Europe and find an angel who looks like me. Every angel is turned white. God is made white. Jesus is made white. Mary is made white. They have taken every power in the Bible and made it white. But that's not what John saw on the Isle of Patmos, and it is not what Solomon saw when he looked in the mirror. If you will simply read the Songs of Solomon in the Jewish Bible, which is accepted by the Christians, Solomon said, you daughters of Jerusalem, don't look upon me because I am black but comely. That means good looking. Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, said black is beautiful. is beautiful, the wisest. John was on the Isle of Patmos, and he fell down and he saw Jesus. And John recorded what he saw in the first chapter of the book of John. And he said Jesus' hair was like lamb's wool.